Chapter 8 of The Radio Boys Trailing a Voice by Alan Chapman. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Tom Hirsch. Chapter 8 Near Disaster. Several days later, while the boys were experimenting with their big set and talking over their interesting meeting with the Forest Service Ranger, Herb displayed an immense horseshoe magnet. "Look what he's got for luck," chortled Jimmy, the superstitious nut. "Superstitious nothing," snorted Herb. "If I'd wanted it for luck, I wouldn't have got a magnet, would I? Any old common horseshoe would have done for luck." "Well, what's the big idea?" asked Bob, looking up from the audion tube he was experimenting with. "Or is there any?" he added, with a grin. "You bet your life there is," returned Herb. "It's got to do with the very audion tube you're fussing with." "Ah, go on," jeered Joe good-naturedly. "What's a magnet got to do with an audion tube? I'd like to know." "Poor old Herb," added Jimmy, with a commiserating shake of his head. "Say, look here, all you fellas, don't you go wasting any pity on me," cried Herb hotly. "If you don't look out, I won't show you my experiment at all." "Go on, Herb," said Bob consolingly. "I'm listening." "Well, I'm glad there's one sensible member of this bunch," cried Herb, and from then on addressed himself solely to Bob. "Look here," he said, "you can make the audion tube ever so much more sensitive to vibration if you put this magnet near it." "Who says so?" asked Bob with interest. "I do. Here, put on the headphones and listen. I'll prove it to you." Bob obeyed and tuned into the nearest broadcasting station where a concert was scheduled. As soon as he signified by a nod of his head that the connection was satisfactory, Herb placed the big horseshoe magnet in such a position that the poles of the magnet were on each side of the tube. Sure enough, Bob was amazed at the almost magical improvement in the sound. It was clearer, more distinct, altogether more satisfactory. He listened in for another moment, then wonderingly took off the headphones while Herb grinned at him in triumph. "Well, what do you think?" asked the latter, while Joe and Jimmy looked at them curiously. "Think?" repeated Bob, still wonderingly. "Why, there's only one thing to think, of course. That fool horseshoe of yours, Herb, is one wonderful improvement. I don't know how it works, but it surely is a marvel." Herb glanced at Jimmy and Joe in triumph. "What did I tell you?" he said. "Perhaps now you'll believe that my idea wasn't such a fool one after all." "But what did it do, Bob?" asked Joe, mystified. "It increased the sensitivity of that old audion tube, that's what it did," replied Bob, absently, his mind already busy with inventive thoughts. "I can't see yet just how it accomplished it, but the connection with the station was certainly clearer and more distinct than usual." "But how can a magnet increase the sensitivity of a vacuum tube?" asked Jimmy, not yet wholly convinced. "It doesn't make sense." "Well, I don't see why not," contradicted Joe slowly. "I suppose the improvement is due to the magnetic effect of the magnet upon the electrons flowing from the filament to the plate. I don't exactly see why it should be an improvement, but if it is, then there must be some reason for it." "I wish we could find the reason," cried Bob excitedly. "If we could make some improvement upon the vacuum tube—" "Don't wake him up. He's dreaming," cried Herb. "If you don't look out, old boy, you'll have us all millionaires." "Well, there are worse things," retorted Bob, taking the magnet from Herb's hand and placing it near the tube. "This has given us something to think about, anyway." For a while they puzzled over the mystery, trying to find some way in which the discovery might be made to serve a practical purpose, all except Herb, who retired to one corner of the lab to fuss with some chemicals which he fondly hoped might be used in the construction of a battery. So engrossed were the boys in the problem of the magnet and vacuum tube that they forgot all about Herb and his experiments. So what happened took them completely off their guard. There was a sudden cry from Herb, followed closely by an explosion that knocked them off their feet. For a moment they lay there, a bit dazed by the shock. Then they scrambled to their feet and looked about them. Herb, being the nearest to the explosion, had got the worst of it. His face and hands were black, and he was shaking a little from the shock. He gazed at the boys sheepishly. What happened?" asked Jimmy dazedly. "An earthquake, I guess," replied Bob, as he looked about him to see what damage had been done. Some doughnuts, which their namesake had recently fetched from the store, lay scattered upon the floor, together with some rather dilapidated-looking pieces of candy, but aside from this, nothing seemed to have been damaged seriously. Jimmy followed Bob's gaze, and, finding his precious sweets upon the floor, began gathering them up hastily, stuffing a doughnut in his mouth to help him hurry. What mattered it to Jimmy that the floor was none too clean? "Say, what's the big idea, anyway?" demanded Joe of the blackened Herb. "Trying to start a 4th of July celebration or something?" "I was just mixing some chemicals, and the result was a flare-up," explained Herb sulkily. "Now, stop rubbing it in, fellow, will you? You might know I didn't do it on purpose." Bob began to laugh. "Better get in connection with some soap and water, Herb," he said. "Just now you look like the lead for a minstrel show." "Never mind, Herb," Joe flung after the disconsolate scientist as he made for the door. "As long as you don't hurt anything but Jimmy's doughnuts, we don't care. You can have as many explosions as you like." "That's all right for you," retorted Jimmy. "But I'll have you know I spent my last nickel for those doughnuts." "Just the same," said Bob soberly as they returned to the problem of the vacuum tube, "we're mighty lucky to have come off with so little damage. Mixing chemicals is a pretty dangerous business unless you know just what you're doing." "And even then it is," added Joe. End of Chapter 8. Recording by Tom Hirsch.